This is Sales Players, and I'm your host, Jesse Woodbury. I've spent my career selling for early stage companies, and now I'm on a mission to help reps and operators find tips, strategies, and resources for generating more pipeline, closing more deals, and building wealth in tech sales. To learn more, visit salesplayers.co. All right, we're live. What's up, Sales Players? It's Jesse here, and I think it's high time we do an episode on the topic of cold calling. Something that I haven't talked about nearly enough on the show, although I have had some amazing guests in the past who were expert cold callers, but I thought it might be helpful to go through how I've approached cold calls throughout the course of my career. And this is top of mind for me right now because lately I have been making a lot of cold calls. I've found that in 2025, it's a channel that still continues to deliver leads and meetings for me, more so than email. About the same as InMail, but eventually you have to master the ability to cold call if you want to excel in tech sales. It's just the reality of it. It's the fastest way to generate pipeline. It's the fastest way to start talking to potential customers. And it's a quick way to learn your pitch and formulate that so that when you do start to demo products and get deeper into the funnel, you're very good at delivering an elevator pitch, which is something that will come up over and over again. So let's get into some ways that you can improve your cold call game. And I'll start first by saying you should approach it like a game. You should actually approach cold calling as a game or a challenge and something where you're competing against yourself. Try not to compete with other people. Although if you happen to be on a team that's really competitive on the calling front, that's cool too. But I just try to compete with myself. If I made 50 cold calls yesterday, I want to make 51 today, right? Incremental, doing 1% better every single day. If I got a connect yesterday, I want to shoot to get 2 connects today, that kind of thing. So approach it as a challenge, a game. You also need to approach it as a routine, something very similar to going to the gym or brushing your teeth. You have to do these things every single day if you can. Get yourself into a routine and make it a non-negotiable for your schedule. You've got to make time to do cold calls. And if that means blocking an hour or 2 hours on your calendar every single day, or even more if you want to, you need to do that. You need to actually block the time on your calendar and write call block or cold call block. I actually do that pretty much every single day. I've got time for cold calls baked in, especially if I'm not working on any late stage deals and I don't have any upcoming meetings to prepare for. If my calendar is relatively clear, you can bet that I'm working on cold calling and putting together sequences that will allow me to make more cold calls and do some multi-touch outbounding. The next piece of advice I have is make sure that you have a good quality data source. This can be a challenge for smaller companies. If you work for a larger company, you most likely already use something like ZoomInfo to source phone numbers. But if you don't have that, you need to go push on your management and make sure that they're giving you the right access to quality data so that you're not just calling dead phone numbers all day or fax machines all day. You want to actually call real people, and if you can, even reach their cell phone. And I know that's a touchy subject. Some people don't like calling cell phones. I would say in the remote work era that we're in now, I feel completely justified in calling cell phones whenever I need to. So make sure you have access to good quality data so that you know that the phone numbers you're calling are valid ones and that you actually have a chance at reaching the person you're trying to call. The next thing that I would suggest doing is always spending just a few minutes, not too much time, because you don't want to give yourself analysis paralysis. But if you can spend just a few minutes ahead of every single call, doing a quick once-over on your prospect's LinkedIn profile to see if you can gather any interesting insights. Some examples of that would be, look at what companies they've worked at before. Are any of those companies currently customers? What's their titles? Sometimes in their bio lines, they actually walk through things like budgets that they own or how many direct reports they have. They'll talk about things like the vendors that they're currently using. That way you can get an idea of who they might be spending money on today. So do a quick once over their LinkedIn profile, look through your CRM system and see if there's been any historical conversations with this person. Make sure that you're fully armed and you've done your homework before you pick up the phone and actually try to call this person. Now let's get into doing the call itself. I'm a big fan of a permission-based opener. I'll give you an example of what that is, and I'll actually give you the line that I've used for years that's always worked really well for me. I know not everybody likes this, but it's always worked really well for me. And what it is when someone picks up the phone, I'll say something like, "Hi, is this Jane?" "Yes." "Jane, am I catching you at a bad time?" I actually ask the question and get permission to continue the conversation. I just gave Jane an out. If she doesn't want to continue the conversation, she can say, yeah, you are catching me at a bad time. Now, if she does say that, I'll typically follow up with something like, great, can I try you back in 30 minutes? Then you're getting her permission to call back in 30 minutes. And so you see how it can be kind of effective. Now, when I use the line, am I catching you at a bad time? There's a 50-50 shot that they're going to say, yes, you are catching me at a bad time. In which case, I'm just going to respond with, great, can I try you back in an hour? Now, there's also a 50% chance that they say, no, I'm actually free right now. What do you got? And now you have their permission to go into your elevator pitch. One of the other approaches you can take if you don't like the am I catching you at a bad timeline is you can call out that it's a cold call. I know a lot of people who say things like, I know you're not expecting my call, but do you have a moment? Some other examples might be, I'll be upfront with you. This is actually a cold call. You can totally hang up now, or you can let me have 20 seconds. So getting their permission I've found to be incredibly helpful, and you'll feel a little bit better about talking to the person regardless of the outcome. And again, my line of, am I catching you at a bad time? Even if they say yes, that's fine. Let me try you back in an hour. Is that okay? And then you're getting their permission again. So you're not letting them off the hook, but you're also not trying to pitch slap somebody in the moment. So typically, once I get their attention and once there's that pause after they've given me permission to continue, the best thing to do is to be very clear and direct. And I'll typically say something like, the reason for my call. I actually literally like to use that phrase, the reason for my call, because it kind of pulls their attention in and gets them to pay attention to your next statement. And I can take this in a few different directions. An important reminder for cold calls is also that you're not trying to sell your product in the cold call. You're just trying to sell the meeting, the next step. Don't try to go too deep into the weeds of all the features and functions of your product and all the value points and all the customers you have. Just focus on getting them to commit to the next meeting. And a best practice there is to actually propose a very specific day and time block. So an example might be something like, Jane, I've got some openings on Wednesday after 2 o'clock Pacific time. Is there anything that would work between 2 and 5 p.m. Pacific time? I'll go ahead and pencil it in and send over a calendar invite. So you're actually boxing Jane into a specific time. It makes it a lot easier because sometimes in the process of trying to coordinate on a time, you give them a big out and they wiggle away. So the other piece of advice I always give people is to work on your intonation. Intonation is the fluctuations in your voice. The last thing you want to do is get on a call and sound like, hi, Jane, I'm with it. You don't want to sound monotone. You want to sound really excited about what you sell. My piece of advice for this is if you are struggling in this area, try standing up when you make your cold calls. It will make a huge difference. If you've ever been through a presentation where someone sat down the entire time and maybe presented slides from their laptop versus when someone's standing at the front of the room and presenting slides, it's a whole different type of presentation. My next piece of advice is to, whenever possible, leave a voicemail. The only time I don't leave voicemails is if I know I'm going to call somebody back later that day or within a couple of days. But I typically try to leave voicemails as often as possible. And the reason for that is because nowadays, if you're calling a cell phone, that voicemail will end up getting transcribed and sent over to the prospect. So they'll actually get an alert on their phone with a transcription of the voicemail I just left. And it gives them a chance to not only hear me talk, but also see what I'm trying to say. Then what I typically also do is I'll send either an email or an in-mail with the subject line, I just left you a voicemail, and then a really short message that says something like, just left you a voicemail, here's why, looking forward to connecting, something along those lines. That's pretty much it. That's my process for cold calling. The biggest thing is to get into the habit of doing it every single day. Know that if you're new to it, it's going to take a long time. You're going to fail a few times. You're going to have some really awful cold calls in order to get to some really great ones. And man, I could tell you all kinds of stories of people that have cussed me out. In my first sales role of my career, I was selling a product to lawyers. And you can imagine how hard that was. Lawyers can be complete assholes. And so I learned pretty quickly how to be brief, how to listen, and how to ask for permission. So again, hope this helps someone out there. And thanks for listening.